Unscripted.
Unshackled.
Uncouth.
What you're about to hear is for mature ears only.
It's Miguel Fuller.
I would show anything. I'd show my hee-hee and my hoo-hoo and my ha-ha.
Holly O'Connor.
Hey, Daddy, you want to take this to the bedroom?
And Scotty the Body.
I am officially not only the grill daddy, but I'm a hot grill daddy.
Oh, wow.
It's the Miguel and Holly Uncensored podcast.
Only from Hot 101.5. Tampa Bay's new hit music.
Hey. So if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Miguel and Holly, you missed the actual audio beginning of this where we talked to Jacob 2 times. And Holly and I got to sing one of our behind the scenes favorite songs that we came up with years ago.
Yeah.
Do you remember how we came up with that, Holly?
Yes, vaguely, because hold on. I feel like I'm digging out of memory.
She's like, hold on, let me search through the file cabinet.
When we first met, Miguel.
Back in 2007. No, it's 2008.
2008.
Yeah. Spring of 2008.
Yeah.
Good year.
Yeah. Good year. Yeah.
Scott was in middle school.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Miguel and I met, and one of the things that came from that first meeting where it was like a radio conference, and Miguel was friends with Steve Kramer, who we've had on this podcast before because you guys went to college together. Steven Kramer told me that he was like good friends with Miguel, and Miguel was going to just pretend to be part of our show so he could come to the radio morning show conference. And so I was like, okay, I don't know this guy, but whatever. I'm in on meeting new people. So we met, and for some reason, that movie with Eddie Murphy where he's pretending to be a
Nutty
woman.
Professor?
No,
Or
not the Nutty Professor.
Big Mama's House?
Was it Martin Lawrence?
Big Mama's house.
Big
Oh
Mama's
my
House. Is that
God.
Martin Lawrence? Not Eddie Murphy. Eddie
Yeah,
Murphy
Martin
was-
Lawrence
okay.
did Big Mama's House.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're right. It was Martin Lawrence, and I believe that was where "How you doing" came from.
How you doing?
Was it that? That's what it was.
How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
So Miguel said it like that. Say it again.
How you doing?
And I thought it was really fun.
Holly, I remember like every time. This is why Holly and I became fast friends, is because like we would laugh at each other's stuff that no one else thought was funny.
No, we thought
And
we were hilarious.
I'd be like, how you doing?
He'd be like, "How you doing?" And I would be like, "Do it again." Like, okay, so that's literally the first quote inside joke that we ever had. And Kramer was like, "Y'all, can you not?" And I'm like, "No, just one more time though. How you doing?"
How you doing?
So then it became so much and so obnoxious that we all just started saying, "How you doing?" all the time.
Yeah.
To each other. And so then eventually Kramer got in on it. And of course he tried to take it over because he's like got this weird, I don't know what sort of twitch in his personality where once he gets on a thing, he will drive it into the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Songs, phrases, shows, whatever. So he would then he started getting on "How you doing?" And then we put in "How you doing?" into everything, including, by the way, what was that one song by One Republic? It was "Stop and Stare," because that came out around that time.
And stare.
Yeah,
was
except
really
we went "How you doing?"
Oh my God.
You have no idea how much "How are you doing?" we did
Ay,
in
ay,
08.
ay.
You don't know.
How you doing? How you doing? How your
So
mama
then
doing?
we started that, and we started. I don't know if it was Kramer or Miguel who at first was like, "We how you doing everything," and started going, "How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? How you doing?
How your mama them doing?
How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? How you doing?
Eat some pancakes and you want
How
some
you doing?
grits
How you
and
doing?
want
How
some
you doing?
sausage. How you doing?
So that's how far that joke went. And now we just every now and then we'll pull the song out.
You know, it's so funny, like being friends with someone for so long. I just really love Scott's face. How he's just like,
what the fuck is happening?
A little confused. Hey, I'm here for it. I'm just
How you
chilling. Yeah,
listen,
okay.
when you've been with someone for so long and it's like you can recall those times
Yeah.
from back in the day when things were just so funny and so new and so different.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, I remember one of the things that Kramer and I used to do when this is like right when I graduated college in 2007, and I was working in Savannah, And he was there for about 3 months before he moved to Panama City.
Mhm.
And his whole thing was when I graduated is he'd be like, welcome to the real world, bitch. And like he would say that, like, because that was his thing. He would just say it over and over and over again. And so at a radio station, when you go to what's called voice track, so that's when like you'll hear, we can like record ourselves in real time, but we're not actually here. And in the system where it has like all the songs that are playing for the day. So I would like go into voice track for the weekend, and then like where it would say Miguel talk here, it would say, welcome to the real world, bitch. And I was like, really?
You're like, oh, you went all the way into next gen recording radio systems and changed it.
Like you took that much effort just to go in and be like, welcome to the real world, bitch.
Yeah, that's right. So
those were fun times.
Early days. How you doing? Okay.
Mom and I'm doing. All right. I have a review from Apple Podcasts.
Oh,
okay.
Want to say thank you to Ronnie, 55,000. I don't know. I love people's 55,000.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just like my mind lost. My mind lost itself. I thought you were gonna say 100 and then it said 1,000. I was like, what are numbers?
I freaked myself out. I'm not great with numbers.
Fine.
So subject line, my favorite podcast. I've never written a review before, but just wanted to say I found this podcast during quarantine and have enjoyed being a part of the Platypus Posse since. I travel about an hour to and from work every day, and it's so easy listening to Miguel, Holly, and Scotty's conversations in the car. Thank you all for being your authentic selves. Heart.
Hey, thank you. Wow. That's really nice.
Thank you, Ronnie, 55,000.
Yes.
Make sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Is really appreciated. Thank you. What are you laughing at, Scott?
I was just thinking, I was like, I want to get a really bad review, but like not literally, like I don't want it to like bring down the rating of the podcast, but I just want to see like somebody like go in, like what would they hate about the podcast? Like what just drives them up a wall? I want to read one of those reviews. Are there one of those?
Have you ever gotten a negative email before?
No. Like from a listener?
A listener?
No.
It will crush your soul.
No, I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday where it's like, I remember in the beginning, I got a little bit of hate when I first came on with y'all because I'm kind of annoying, but you know, but at first it kind of affected me because I was like, what? Not everyone likes me. And then it kind of started to drift where I was like, well, I think if you really get to know me, like you're not going to not like me. And that's not to sound like a cocky bee, but like, I don't know. I'm not going to try to annoy you. I'm going to try to win you over. Like, that's just kind of like my personality.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm just try to be just a nice person. So whenever somebody hates me or sends me like a mean message, I'm like, oh, you think you're thinking of me in a different light than who I actually am is why I think some people hate me or find me annoying.
It's always interesting because people, what I found through the years in the negative emails, like I actually have a folder that I wouldn't add to it now, but just back then that was in my let your haters be your motivators type deal. And I'd be like, fuck you, I'm gonna save this, I'm gonna prove you wrong. Yeah. And so like all these emails go back from like years ago. But people, what I found, the common thread in hate messaging is you are highlighting something from their life that they find is missing or something that hits too close to home for them.
Well, it triggers them in some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's never really about you. And that's how it is with people that fight with you online, by the way.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
It's never about you. They got triggered
because
of something you said, and they are now going to put all their shit that they're dealing with in their own head on you, and it is your fault.
Right.
Never once would they ever think that this is something wrong with me. It is your fault for saying what you said. Shame on you.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And so like there's just, I'm looking through and it's not even bother reading it because it's like none of the references make sense anymore.
Oh yeah.
From so long ago. Like I should just delete this folder.
You
but
should.
I used to keep them. But like there was this one guy who him and his boyfriend, this is from Panama City, they used to like invite me to stuff all the time. And I'd be like, well, I can't make it. And then one day they just wrote this like scathing email to our boss and was like, Miguel is the worst type of gay. Like, don't let him on the radio. He's disgusting. And my boss sent it to me and was like, I thought this was funny. And so I was like, all right, cool. And I read it and I was like, here's why they're mad. I never hung out with them.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so then I responded back to them and I was like, all right, so you got to understand, like you hear me on the radio, and especially way back in the day when I used to like go out all the time and I was like the party guy, the funny guy, like that was me on the show.
Yeah.
And so everyone expected me to be that way all the time
In real life.
in real life. And so I was like, I'm actually kind of a shy person. Like I keep a very close-knit group of people that I hang out with. That's not me all the time. So when you really pull back and think about it, you're asking me to come hang out with two people who I don't know.
Yeah.
And so that makes me very uncomfortable. Like if I see y'all out and we all like get in a group and we're talking, that's cool. But I'm not just randomly coming over to y'all's
show
house
up. Yeah.
to hang
yeah.
out. And then he was like,
Oh.
I'm so sorry. I never thought about it that way. And I was like, I get it. I totally understand, which is why I'm not mad. I just want you to like sort of see it from my point of view of what you're asking me to do.
Yeah.
And so that's why most times, that's why I enjoy taking like the angry phone calls, because I like just sort of taking people and taking them from that anger and walking them through and being like, all right, let me hear you. Let me understand why you're angry and what frustrated you about whatever we said or did. And then understand why. And then let's make it right.
Right.
And then usually, like you said, Holly, it's coming from a place that made them be triggered about something from their past.
Yes, oftentimes. And I would have a really hard time with that in general because I really hate confrontation. It makes me like almost sick. Like I can't do it. I'm better now about at least figuring out, like, we had a woman call the other day after a segment we did with Scotty about, should Scotty FaceTime his lady friend?
Mm-hmm.
And she called up and she was mad because Miguel and I gave him the wrong advice. And we were like, okay, let's hear your point. So she had a point. And I'm like, it doesn't really match with what the segment was going. So I started trying to explain. I was like, I think you misunderstood the segment. And I'm not blaming you or anything, but what we said was this. Here's the actual situation. She's like, well, I didn't hear all of it. I'm like, cool. I get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's how it kind of wrapped up. And then what she replied with, what didn't make no damn sense. And so after she didn't make sense for like a third time, I was like, whoa. What's your situation? Tell me what's going on with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And once she did that, I was like,
It was never even about me.
it was never about Scott. She literally took our advice and tried to make it make sense for her life and was angry that it didn't. And of course it didn't, because that's a whole different thing. And then she tried to reference Blown Off and how that has crushed her spirit for dating. And I was like, whoa. So we ended up having like a little mini therapy session with her on the phone off the air, because I was like, you have to understand, like, yes, we get a lot of people involved in Blown Off, but for the most part, we're not actually like, we give some advice during Blown Off, but Blown Off is mainly for entertainment purposes.
Right.
Like, you're not going to watch like a show on a TV network to try to get life advice.
Right.
That is for entertainment. Like some of our advice segments, we get pretty real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But she had missed the point of this completely, only because she was hurting so much from her own dating experience. And so once we figured that out, we were like, okay,
we can move past it.
Let's talk about you. And of course, that's why
it.
you feel this way. Can I share a quick story?
Please.
I just was thinking about, because we're talking about hate mail or whatever that we got. And this is the worst thing, I think. One of the worst thing that's ever happened.
Oh.
And it was in the very early days of my radio career. I was at WCKY, Buckeye Country in Ohio. And it was absolutely within my first year there. And by the way, nobody trains you how to be a personality.
Right.
Like, I had a conversation with a college classmate of mine. First of all, our college classes taught us nothing to be prepared for radio, a career in radio. I'm glad I have my college education.
Of course.
It helped me in way other ways.
Yeah.
But for my radio career, it taught me almost nothing except how to type well in like broadcast font.
You good type of girl.
You are.
So anyway, and how to do like a 60-second ad and a 30-second ad. And I wish some of our salespeople would take that class. Anyway, that was more, it's not really for people now because they do their own thing, but like people in Panama City, they would write us ads to read. And I'd be like, girl, you just put like 8 million words into what's supposed to be a 30. Ain't happening. No. Anyway, so nobody teaches you the personality aspect of it. And when I say that, I mean, yes, like they teach you how to push the buttons and sort of deliver in the way that you're supposed to on the air. And all of it is more like on-air training. When you have to go out and host an event, That's a completely different arena.
Mhm.
And no one had ever given me any guidance. And I mean, I know how to talk to people. I'm a
Yeah.
good people person because I'm a people pleaser.
Oh.
But that sometimes got in the way of me being a good personality because I was trying to make everybody happy all at once. It was very overwhelming. I think I was at a bowling alley for some reason, hosting some event at a bowling alley. And I was by myself, as I usually was for these events. They were just like, oh, go do your thing. I'm like, what thing? And I had to make announcements. I had to do a prize giveaway. I had to please the client, which was the bowling alley, and make sure they were catered to. I had people that were there. I didn't have like a following or anything. I was just a jock on the station. Nobody knew who I was yet, but I had people that were there that I was trying to like glad hand and be nice to and take pictures with in case like they might want a picture for the radio station being there. It was a lot. And like I said, it was one of my first events that I had ever done. So I was in the middle of it. The owner of the bowling alley kept waving me down to try to get me to come where he was because he had some notes. Oh, and don't forget, I was broadcasting. And back in the day, remotes were different. Like we had to set up a whole tower. We had to do the I can't remember.
The Marty.
The Marty.
Mm-hmm.
And Marty unit. I had to get the Marty out to like fiddle with the knobs to make sure it shot the signal back. And
it was
like,
basically like a minor antenna for wherever you are that would shoot back to the radio station.
yes.
And it was like a whole contraption that you had to set up.
It was a whole piece of broadcast equipment.
Yeah. Where now it's just a small box.
Oh, pretty much.
That's wireless.
And most of the stuff we do now, like we record it and we send it back to the station and then they air it. This was live. So I had to keep my eye on the station to see like what time is my break airing. I don't miss it.
Right.
It'll be dead air. And so it was a mess. I was very stressed out. And at some point, and I do remember this, a mom and her daughter came over and they were like, hey, we want to get a picture with you. And I was like, I would love to. Give me 1 second. And so because at that moment, the owner was waving me down. I'm like, okay, give me 1 second. Because I can't imagine what would have happened if I'm like, hold on, bro. Let me do a quick selfie. So I was like, give me 2 seconds. Okay. So I ran to see what the owner wanted. Then I needed to do my break. So I went over and did my break. And then I tried to find the mom and the daughter and I couldn't find them afterward. This woman wrote the most scathing email to my boss who said, and it said, I don't remember exactly, but the gist of it was, this is a horrendous woman who snubbed my daughter and I, a child. She was too busy being a personality. She is all like it, the wording and the tone, and you would have thought that I stabbed this little girl in the eyeball.
Oh my
God, you didn't.
gosh.
When he read that email to me, I started crying immediately
Ah.
because it felt so unfair. Like I would never, ever purposely ignore someone, let alone a kid.
Right.
I wasn't even a known personality at that time. And then I was like, but she didn't. And obviously this was a lesson because like nobody sees what else you're going through. They just know that they had a bad experience with you. It was devastating. And then to top it all off, my boss goes, I'm going to have to write you up.
What the? Oh,
so
God.
then I just cried even harder. And he's like, I'm sorry. It's a really bad complaint letter. We have to put it in your file. We're just going to write you up. So don't do that anymore.
He wrote you up like they're supposed to have your back.
This is the environment in which I grew up in radio. Like I'm friends with him now. We're like really close friends. But for the first 2 years that I worked there.
That was Dave?
Dave. We were enemies for the first 2 years that we worked there. He fucking hated me because he was like,
that bitch.
This is some flippant college girl that I have to train. I was like the Scotty of the time when I didn't like know a lot of stuff. And I was like excited, but he was having none of it. And he's like, this is obnoxious and annoying. It was not good. So I got written up. It was, and I wanted to share that story. I feel like I've never even shared that story.
No, I don't. Clap. This is probably the first story that is new from back in the day
that you haven't heard
in like probably like 5 years. Like I'm impressed. I've never heard that story before.
I almost want to text Dave and be like, do you remember this? And he probably would say no because he probably doesn't, but it was devastating to me. And I did that when you were talking about getting an email like that. I felt myself get like about it because it just felt so every part of it felt wrong. Like I hated myself. Hated. And so I really tried hard to be like the best person, but as someone who is slightly introverted and shy in real life and gets overwhelmed with meeting new people and big crowds and stuff, it took a long time for me to figure out how to handle and host events.
Right.
It took a long time. I didn't want to let anybody down though.
I think that's one of the hardest things about this business is, and if you're in a business that isn't like a process type business where it's like, if you're a teller at a bank, like there are times you can get creative if you're trying to help or solve a problem. But like for your day-to-day things, it's like it's a very like A to B, B to C, it makes sense. But if you're in a more like creative field, if you're like doing video or social media or something like that, where everything is sort of subjective and you sort of create your own path, it can be very difficult when you're coming up because everybody wants you to learn their way and how they do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it can be hard and frustrating because like you can be so excited and you just want to be there and do it, but then you're trying to live your life and there's a lot of sacrifices you have to make. Like I remember my first big, there were sort of like two moments where there was one where I had to learn how to organize my work and delegate and not get overwhelmed. And it was a guy, it was my second program director, Russ, who now works for the Kid Craddock show in Dallas. And he was my boss. And we had a very difficult year because that was like my first full-time year because he was like one of my bosses. Then I had our other operations manager, John Weatherby.
Oh, big bag of doorknobs.
No, that was Bill Edwards.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I
that
thought
was
John Weatherby.
that was the host of Savannah's Morning News.
Yeah.
John Weatherby
Yeah.
was the meteorologist for all of our stations and on WTOC in Savannah, which I think he's still there now. But Russ and I, like, he was young and I was like brand new.
It doesn't help when your manager is young.
Exactly.
And you're younger, but they don't
Mhm.
really know because he was only 2 years older than me.
Yeah, and like Russ was still learning how to be a manager himself.
Mhm.
And I just remember they had us on like, and not just him, but like the company at the time. Like you had to like clock in and clock out. It was like one of those, not just like get your work done and leave. It was like clock in, clock out.
Yeah.
And I had a second job because they didn't pay me a lot. And so I was trying to like finish all my work to get ready to go. And he was like, well, what about the thing that you were supposed to finish to send to the people? And I was like, well, I didn't get to it today. And I just remember, because for me, it's not the words, it's the look and the energy.
Oh, it's the tone. It's all of that extra stuff.
And I just remember he gave me this look like, why the fuck did we even hire you? Like, why are you here? Are you not that good enough?
Are you
that
not
you
capable?
can't capable?
Ugh.
And I just remember being on, like, my hand was on the door to leave the radio station and he had popped his head out to ask me if I'd finished it. And I just remember I was like, no, Russ, I didn't. And then tears just started coming down my face. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm meant to do this job. I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
But it's like when you're brand new, that's why I always tell college kids that first year when you get out of school, no matter what you're doing, it's going to suck because you've never been faced with the pressure like you are in whatever job it is you're doing. Because now with perspective, I understand where Russ was coming from because he probably got blowback because that job wasn't done. And he was frustrated that I didn't get it done. But I was just like, well, I didn't get it done today, so I'll do it tomorrow. But that's when I learned about you got to prioritize and time management and all that stuff. Second story was I sort of like Scott in that year, I was producing a morning show on our conservative news talk station for Bill Edwards, Big Bag of Doorknobs.
Big bag of doorknobs.
Whenever he was on the air and get frustrated, he would say, big bag of doorknobs. And I was always like, good God, I love you, Bill Edwards.
Okay.
Oh, jeez.
But I had to be there at 5:30 and start getting all of his news clips ready and all that stuff. And then I would run his audio board for him. And I did the traffic reports. Well, at that time, I was still like 1 foot in college for Georgia Southern and then 1 foot in the working world. And so my friends that were still seniors would come down and visit during the week sometime. And so I would stay up late. We would drink wine. We'd have fun. And there was like one night where I was like, I'll be fine. I'm young. I can wake up.
That's what you always think.
And then I didn't wake up.
Yeah.
And then I woke up. It was like 6:15 and the show started at 6. And it was John Weatherby. And he'd called me like 5 or 10 times. And I finally picked up and I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he was like, take your time. Don't hit a tree and get here. And so then I got there and he had that look because he's like a father figure almost. Like he's probably like 6'7", like
Oh,
tie,
jeez.
like glasses, big facial hair. And he just looked down at me. It was like, are you taking this job seriously? Do you know that there are thousands of listeners that are depending upon what you do for Bill Edwards? And he started his show not having anything ready. And that caused a chain reaction of things that went bad. You've got to pre-think what you do. And I was like, okay.
Right? Is that the way you're like?
So then I went to the bathroom. I cried it out.
Yeah.
I've never been late for a show since then. Not once. Because I just remember that feeling of not only did I let Bill Edwards down, but I let all of his listeners that have listened to him for like 20 or 30 years down because I had clawed my way to that full-time position and I wasn't prepared. So that's why I'm so big about having my shit together, being prepared, because I never want to feel that like, moment in the pit of my stomach. Have you had any of those moments yet, Scott?
A little bit. I have a weird perspective on stuff like that. Like the one thing I think of like that is I think like they're gonna be all right. But like I don't want to go too deep into like that thought process because I'm going through a transition in how I view anything right now in general with life and work. But I haven't had too many serious moments like that. I haven't effed up too much. I have a different relationship with like our big boss, like Boss Man Will, than y'all do, which is cool because like he, when I have all these jobs that I'm doing and I start to let one slack, like now it's at a point where it's like I feel that wrath from him a little bit where it's like, hey, like we hired you. You're supposed to do these jobs. Like, let's get it done. Like no more, putzing around and getting it done. And, it's happening. It's getting done. But I'm trying to think if I've effed up too many times. Like I've done things.
If you can't remember,
it would stick out.
Yeah,
I haven't.
You'd feel it in your soul.
But like management style, like I'm very thankful for like even here or y'all because the management style is very much different than obviously the stories that y'all are sharing, and which I'm forever thankful for because I would not. And we've talked about this before on the podcast where it's like I would not learn if you just come down on me. Like you could yell at me and scream at me and do all those things, but in my mind, like you just lost your respect now. Now it's like, now you're just that person. We're not friends. We're not work family, anything like that. It's kind of like to me, like that's my defiance in me. Like, it's like, I'm just gonna be like, all right, fuck you. Like, I'll get it done. But you know what? Any relationship that we had that I wanted to learn from you or grow from you, like it's gone.
Yeah.
Because I don't respect that. I don't think that, I think there's a better way to do it. And I learn better when it's like you take the step to understand why things happen. And I've talked, before both to like Miguel and Holly about this and also our boss man, Will, of just like, you have to explain to me specifically and many other people, I think a majority of people, of why, what is happening here? What is the outline factor that I could connect to instead of just being like, get this fucking thing done? I'm like, well, okay, it's not a priority right now because I don't know why it's so important. I have other things I know why I have to get them done. You haven't explained exactly what this like role really means. And as soon as that's connected, then I'm like, all right, prioritized. I get it now. Or the bigger thing is when somebody understands, like, let's say if I did fuck up, and they want to come with that next step to be like, what's actually going on? Instead of just coming down on me and being like, yo, you effed this up. Like, you suck. You shouldn't be here. Whatever. Like, again, like that's when you're going to lose respect for me because there could be 1,000 things going on in my life. And that's where it's like, for me, that's where I take myself out of the job situation. Maybe react however you want, but it's like, we have to take a reality check to realize that sometimes we need to care about each other and ourselves more than the job. Like the job, it's, at the end of the day, it's a job. And I kind of associate it with like, if, this is going to get real really quick. If I died right now and like, let's say I was going through some shit, like, yeah, like people would be sad. Company would be sad. There might be a little talk, an email that goes out, but like, I'm going to be replaced in like 3 months. And so like, I need to feel like you genuinely care about me and like actually want to care about what's going on in my life before just being like, well, fuck you, you suck. And so luckily, that's been the case here. Like, I haven't had many people like come down hard and never try to understand like the deeper level of like, hey, like, let's talk this out. Like, that was one of the coolest moments, honestly, whether Boss Man Will knows it or not, when he really got real with me. He's like, look, like you are going to go through things in these next couple months as you're transitioning into a full-time position. I want to make sure your mental health is okay. And for him to say that, like, I don't know if I could like even put it into words, but that meant so much because I was like, damn, thanks. Because I'm going through the ringer right now and this sucks. And I still haven't fully transitioned to feeling comfortable right now. And at least it gives me a little comfort to bring it up with him when I do feel like I'm going a little like nuts in my head. And that might be the next conversation I have with him because I'm still struggling right now to transition into everything. It's very difficult.
It doesn't happen easily.
It's
No,
very
it's
hard
rocky
right now.
for everybody.
It is. It
like
takes a
we've been
minute.
saying it. We know.
Yeah. And so for him to say that was such a cool management leader style where I was like, thank you. Whether, and I truly believe he meant it because it's something that's kind of been preached for a while now. But that's the style where I'm like, I want to work for you now. I want to get things done because you're going to look out for me for those deeper things, not just the work that's going to get done, but for my well-being. Now I'm motivated to get it done. Luckily, that's been the case since I've started working here and with y'all too.
I'm curious. You said that you are under or trying to, I don't remember the phrasing you said, but your relationship to work is changing or what do you mean?
I don't know. I don't know how far I want to speak into it because I don't want to say things that I like either sound off or like, I don't know.
You're not prepared to talk about it?
Like I could talk about it because I like to talk to my friends about it and y'all are my friends and the listeners are my friends. Like I view work now, it's kind of relates back to the whole fact of what I just said. Like if I died right now, like it would suck. It would be sad. People would talk about it for a little bit, but I would get replaced. And, we
work in radio. You wouldn't be. They would just be like, all right.
Be like, well, guys,
Yeah,
hope you can
that's
do what
too
Scott
bad.
was
Good
doing.
luck without him.
Do it.
But I think the reality is it's like I don't know how I want to go about my career in life anymore. Like I don't know like how I'm going about making sure like I could honestly be in this radio station all day. I could like literally with the things that I have to do, I could do all day, every day.
And people have.
But that's where, and like the transition right now is like, I was so fired up to do that. But then I started looking at life and I was like, what the fuck? I'm 24. I do not want to be in my 30s, even in the next stage and be like, oh, great. I got rid of those years and didn't get to do things as what I'm doing now. And I know I pushed myself to the limit where it's like, maybe I'm a little more tired, but I'm getting out and I'm socializing with friends who I might not see in a year. Or I'm going out late nights and having these socialized events where it's like, I am in a state where I'm just so, and I've talked about this before, where I'm in fear of missing out on these experiences. I think there's a difference between experiencing life and just going through the moments of life and just step by step. And that's my fear. And that I directly associates with my mom and watching my mom go through life. And this is something that she always taught me because I hated watching her go through work and just work. And she finally started to get the concept of living at the very end of her life, where I remember calling her and she was going out to like Disney randomly with friends. She had a job, like my mom got fired from her job and it sucked. But the one beautiful thing that came out of it is she started doing things for herself that she absolutely loved. And I haven't seen my mom that happy in so long. And I'm so happy. Those are the last couple memories I have about her because that taught me, as much as I love this career and I want to climb the ladder and I want to really just change the game and be able to influence others in a positive light, I want to make sure that I'm doing it in a way that I'm able to experience life. And that's the thing. I literally talked to my therapist about this yesterday of like, really got to narrow down what that is. Like, how does that look? I know my love is to speak and to influence and to be a positive light for others. What is that going to look like? Is it radio? Is it speaking? Is it traveling and speaking? Is it vlogging? I don't know, but I got to really dive back into that. Because what I don't want to have happen is I get so burnt out of just like feeling like I'm just going into a job and not understanding, again, the why behind why I'm doing it. And so my reality check is like, I feel lost right now because I want to give as much as I can to this career. And I'm forever grateful for the opportunity set before me. But I do know that if I go at it too much, that I'm going to miss out on a lot of opportunities that I will later resent my career for.
Well, here's a couple things. One of the things that I'm learning now being 35 is that you will have several different phases to your life. And it feels like now at 24, you've got to like do it all now and you've got to have all the answers, but you don't.
Yeah.
Like focus on what's in front of you now and be the best at it that you can. And then when you feel like, you know what, I think I'm ready for the next thing, then you move on to the next thing, because then you face the, you could potentially be like, all right, there are all these things I want to do. And then like you never do anything because you're trying to do all of them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like, all right, you know what, for the next 2 years, I'm focusing on this. And then after it, once I get to whatever level that is, and you'll know when you get to a point when sort of like we just talked about on the show with Ellen, with her talk show, where she's like, this isn't a challenge anymore. She's making $80 million a year. Everything is probably done for her. She comes in, she does it, and then she goes home to a beautiful palatial estate.
Mhm.
But it's not challenging for her. And you'll know, because that happened to me when we were in Panama City the second time, where after that first year and a half, I was like, all right, I'm good. I'm ready. I'm ready for whatever's next. I'm ready. You just know, you know?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
to me, I've learned I'm just going to put my head down and focus on what is in front of me right now. Also, real quick, what you're just talking about is really interesting. I love a good meme. And this is a quote actually from Oprah that I posted on my Insta earlier this week. Intention is ruling your life, whether or not you're aware. It's law. It is one with cause and effect, and you can't have action or reaction without it. In order to step into the most powerful version of yourself, you need to have clarity of intention. You need to know not just what you want, but why you want it.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, but all that stuff is really difficult for most people.
Right. But have you spent time thinking about it?
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing. I think I think about someone like our former boss, who is now a life coach.
Yes.
And this is like what he does, because
Mhm.
he like basically takes what Oprah just said,
Mhm.
but is like, I know that's a lot. Here's how it could make sense for you.
Right, because you have to like put it into action.
You have to put it in action, and you have to understand that, like, because most people, I feel like most people are just sort of blindly searching for their purpose, and they don't know because they've been fed this bill of you work hard, you get to this point, then the next point, then you do this, then that, and then you're good. But you're not good, because when did anybody stop and ask you what you like to do?
Mhm.
What brings you joy? And so I think that more people need to understand how to work with intention. And that comes from knowing who you are.
Mhm.
I didn't know who I was most of my life. I mean, I'm going to be 40. And until a couple of years ago, I had no idea who I was. And I didn't know that I didn't know who I was.
Mm.
That's the catch 22.
Mhm.
You're supposed to know who you are, but how do you know that you don't know who you are if you just don't know?
Right.
It's a little bit of a paradox clusterfuck.
But that's the thing, but then you also change.
You can definitely
You
change.
definitely
And learn yourself. I
Right.
think it starts off by learning yourself, asking yourself, why do I do the things that I do? The why is a
Mhm.
good starting place. Why do I do what I do? And if it's not for a reason that is because I want to, if it's a reason that you should, or so and so thinks, or it has to be you. So I think that's a good way to start into what you said, because what you read sounds beautiful,
Mhm.
but it can almost be too heady for someone who doesn't even know who they are.
Absolutely. And that's why I feel like when I say you, I mean all of us
Mm.
have to ask yourself, what is it that you want out of life? And that's what I've asked Abe, my fiance, a lot of times, because he's one of those people that hasn't sat down and spent a lot of time being like, who is Abe?
Right.
What do I want?
Well, not maybe not,
No,
I don't know
because
how
you don't have
many, but
time. You don't have time to
But
do
it's like
that.
one of the most important questions in my eyes that you could ask yourself.
Yes.
It's like, again, like it all goes back to like, and I know I word vomited a lot of my thought, but that's why I was kind of like, ooh, do I want to talk about it? But that's the thought behind it. It's like, what do I want this life to be of? Because, you know, I know it's like, yes, young, we're all young actually in this room, like
Yeah.
still many years to go. But the more that you put it off, the more time that goes by. And next thing you know, it's like your capability to do certain things that you might want to do now is not going to be there forever. And I always like to kind of give and I know there's outliers that people will be able to still do things, but I always like to look at it like, let's just say I wanted to climb a freaking mountain. Like when I'm, 60 and I still want to do it, and I have never done it, probably not going to be able to climb that mountain like I could right now.
right, there are
Whatever that
some
mountain in
things-
life may be.
There are some things that do require, being younger
Right.
or older. It's true.
Yeah. It's just, that's the transition where I am right now, where I'm like, I'm reevaluating, because I got here because I knew exactly what my why was. And I still have my why. It's just now discovering, like, how do I want to go about that why,
Mhm.
and changing like the next layer, like how and the what. So it's kind of like all that. It's just, It's interesting. Like I told my therapist this yesterday. I feel like I'm in a new transition. Like I was in one when I was like 19, and now I'm in a new one when I'm in 24. And just understanding, like, again, it's a constant question to ask myself, like, what do I want this life to be made of? Because I don't want to look back on it and be like, dag nabbit, missed out on that one.
Hope you said dag nabbit.
I probably will. I'll be 85 saying dag nabbit.
Yeah, and always do check-ins, because I always remember what Angela, our life coach / morning show coach, was talking about. When the boat gets off course, it happens real slow. It happens real slow. And if you, maybe it's been a while since you checked in with your truest self to figure out, wait a minute, let's take a look around and let's kind of do a little body check, because people change. Is this still where I want to be? Is this even where I wanted to be in the first place? Did I somehow get off course? Because you like turn a boat wheel by like 1 degree, suddenly you end up in a completely different area than you were trying to go to. So it's good to do little check-ins with yourself every now and then.
It is. I was just telling Holly the other day off the air that I feel like the past year and a half, probably 2 years, but then especially in the past year, since George Floyd and then all of the social justice issues, that I've just really just sort of dived into just systemic racism and the history of our country. And the more things that I uncover, just the more angry it makes me, and the more upset it makes me, and the more sad it makes me, that I can now put sort of facts to what I've always felt. And I've talked probably 3 years ago about when my mom was sick or my grandmother was sick, and just how they don't have any life savings. They don't have any retirement plans. They are truly dependent upon, what the government gives you from Medicare or whatever it is, and Social Security and stuff like that. And I used to be like, it's just so unfortunate that that's the way our system is set up. But I couldn't really like talk about it in a factual way. But now that I've sort of dug down deep into like what's happened and why it is, and it's just so crystal clear how the system was set up, I want to do something about it. And that's what I'm a doer. I'm not a doer. I said I am a doer, and I want to do something about it. And so I feel like my purpose is changing, because for the past 35 years, my entire existence has been, I want to do a morning show. I want to make people laugh. I want to make people feel good in the morning. And now I feel that it's changing, and I want to help. I want to do something about the way that the system is set up. And it's like I keep feeling clues from the universe sort of leading me into that direction. And even just the other day, Scott, you and I and Abe were talking about some money stuff. And you were saying how, after your mom passed, that, you've been granted, from her, like these financial situations that'll put you in a better place for the future. And Abe's parents, literally from like his mom had some money that passed down, that they're helping us out with some stuff. And I'm like, and we had that conversation. I got really quiet.
I noticed.
And I was just like, that's the system working. That, your mom, her mom, Abe's parents, his parents had these opportunities in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s to build this generational wealth.
Yes.
And they were able to help you with these things. And I'm like, that really fucking sucks. And now, granted, yes, there are lots of white people who are like, well, I don't have that.
Right.
Ain't nothing passed down to me.
A difference, like, and especially it's very geographically telling.
Right. Absolutely.
The poor white community.
Absolutely. So I'm not saying this isn't a blanket statement. I'm just saying most of the time, the opportunities that were given to white people back then to build wealth, to pass down to future generations, were not given to black people. And I'm very thankful that I've had the opportunity and the whatever it is to be able to beat that and to build my own, not wealth. I don't feel it's not wealth, but I'm getting there. I'm working on it. I'm trying.
Yeah.
And I want to give back. And so there are things in my mind that I'm like, this is what I want to do with the money and the wealth, hopefully that will come one day, that I can leave behind and help those behind me, because the system has just been set up for so long to be so unfair.
Yes.
And injustice just fucking infuriates me. And so the only way that I can do it is to help and to be an organizer and to make a difference. And so like that's how I'm feeling like my why, my intention is starting to change now.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, all right, now I got some time to figure out how do I do it? Sort of like way back when I was in high school and I was like, I want to be on a morning radio show. How do I do it?
Yeah.
And I had to figure it out. And so now I can feel myself saying, all right, let's start working on how do we make this happen?
Yeah, I feel the same about that shifting reason why. Because I think when you get into radio, when you start any career in your teens and 20s, that is the reason for your why is from your teens and 20s,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the reason why I started off in this business because I wanted to be famous. Radio was like the YouTube back in the day, right? Like you didn't have online video capabilities. You could go be a VJ on MTV.
Yes, which I wanted to audition for.
I did also. I also wanted to audition. But the radio seemed like the only local avenue to go be famous. Like, why? Why did I want to be famous? Because I wanted people to like me. Because again, at the core, I was a people pleaser that didn't know it.
Right.
So I wanted to be famous, A. And then B, I wanted to make people laugh. I've always been that person that wants to brighten the room, like make people feel better. So that seemed like a good converging. And eventually it stopped being about famous because I was like, okay, I'm busy with radio. I ain't got time for all that nonsense. And plus it's like it's difficult for me to talk to people sometimes. So that's an issue. But the making people smile and like helping people, that's always been the core besides that stint of really wanting to be famous as a young person. But as I came up through the radio system, it became clearer that my purpose, and I always said, and I probably said this up until a few years ago, I'm in my dream job because my dream job is to put a smile on people's face and to help them and to make people feel better. And radio for me, a morning show in radio, not just as a jock. To me, I was like, I need more time. We need more content. Was to do exactly that. And that's what we did. In fact, we crafted our show, Miguel, to do exactly that. And
Our
it felt
original
like,
mission statement.
yes, it felt like the heavens came together and I was like, I am helping people. Like you just said, you wanted to put smiles on people's faces. We were living that dream and we did that. And then we did that well for years. And like, there comes a time in your life, and I feel like this may be like the midlife crisis type thing. Maybe, I don't really know. It's a turning point of sorts where your focus has kind of changed a little bit. Mine is still the need to help people, but that fulfillment comes less from the entirety of the show on the air. Like our show on the air absolutely does help people, and it still fulfills what I want to make my purpose. But after the last few years of me sort of diving into mental health, but also figuring out who I am, which came with me going to therapy. And I've always been an empath. Like I've always been a feeler. I can feel things. And so that also came with being a people pleaser, growing up codependent to my mom, where I had to I would try to regulate my mood to make sure she was okay. So it wasn't healthy, but what it did was fine tune my sense of feeling for others, combine it with my natural empathic abilities, and I can actually understand people deeper, even if I don't know them that well.
Right.
It's a little weird. I kind of consider it my superpower secretly. So having built on all that, figuring out who I am, still having the desire to help others, but knowing more now, instead of just blindly being like, blown off makes people laugh. It's not quite cutting it.
Right.
Like I want to still do that, obviously. And I want to still satisfy those people's desire to hear blown off or whatever the case may be, whatever we do, crazy hijinks on the radio. I still love headphone karaoke because I get to satisfy my dancer, stage show hog in every week we do it. So I love all those things, but kind of like you said, there's this weird tugging, like a calling that is there.
Right.
And it has stopped being sporadic and it's now more consistent where I'm like, will this always be the best way for me to help people and satisfy that?
And I think that's what's great about this vehicle and this platform. of the podcast, of the show, of being able to explore those things.
Yes.
And being able to do all of that. And we do it in little bits and being able to, I was very happy last year when our company, Cox Media Group, it's now an official day we get off. It's Juneteenth.
Yes, that was really cool.
It was really cool. And we got to talk about it on the air. And those are things 5 years ago, they would have been like, girl, unless you're talking about Ariana Grande or Post Malone, ain't nobody care.
Right.
But now they're like, we want to understand more.
Yeah.
And so there are ways to do it. And so this is what's great and what you should do listening in your own life is to constantly check in with yourself and to say, is what I'm doing feeding it? And listen, there are lots of times in your life when you just got to get a paycheck. So I'm not saying if you have a job and you're like, God, I hate my job. Don't just quit your job. Do it until you can find that thing that feeds you and makes you feel good and makes you feel like you are contributing to society and you're fulfilling whatever it is that you are supposed to do on this earth.
Your divine purpose.
Yes. Keep searching for that and doing it.
I like that. Good talk.
Scott, what's your information?
At Scott Tavlin, SCOTTTAVLIN.
Any final thoughts?
Nope.
No?
Yeah, I'm good.
You sure?
Yep.
Holly?
Radio Holly on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.
Miguel Fuller, MIGUELFULLER. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the places. Make sure to leave us a review, please, on the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. Leave us a nice rating. And of course, always, if you want some Miguel and Holly swag, just shoot me an email, Miguel@hot1015tampabay.com. Bye, Platypus Posse.
Catch up with the previous episodes of the Miguel and Holly Uncensored podcast from Hot 101.5.
Just hit up the Hot 101.5 app, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Search Miguel and Holly Uncensored.